Hello and welcome back to the channel. In April of last year I made a video, and I'm sure I wasn't the first, about the potential return of Moriah Poppy. Before you ask, this video isn't me essentially remaking that video with a new camera quality. It would have never been followed up on if it wasn't for a few recent interviews that took place on the Swim podcast and an interview with NME. The Someone Who Isn't Me podcast episode with both Poppy and Titane Sinclair came out last month, and the NME interview within the past fortnight. This video wouldn't have been made if it wasn't for the existence of both interviews. They complement each other in a way and really solidify the fact that Poppy and Moriah are becoming separate in the public eye. I just want to quickly be pedantic with you for a second. It's one of my favourite hobbies. But the article posted by NME claims that it's the first time Poppy's been out of character for an interview. Now, there's many ways that I could disprove this, but I'm going to disregard the entire pre-Poppy era, because it can be disproven after that, by the Swim podcast in fact. Neither were published all that closely to the date they were written in the case of NME and recorded in the instance of Swim. NME says that some of the interview takes place on the day of the Ghouls to the Front festival where Poppy performed, which was the end of October, with the rest of it taking place earlier in October, which is implied by adding maths to the equation when it says 3 weeks later on October 31. The Swim podcast, on the other hand, was even potentially released before the NME interview took place, with it being released on October 6th depending on your time zone, which, fun fact for you, was the date of Poppy's channel anniversary. But if you take away the 21 days, which is exactly 3 weeks, that makes the NME interview on the 10th. It could have been done anywhere between the 4th and the 10th technically, but regardless, the Swim podcast was made before the NME interview even took place. But dates aren't important, it's the content that matters most. For full context, both interviews will be linked below. The NME interview is dull for the most part, like her not watching Black Mirror is probably close to the most interesting piece of information. I mean, you don't have to say she's Moriah, but it can be confusing when you say Poppy is out of character, yet Poppy likens stylistic change to that of David Bowie, when that doesn't make sense because Poppy is a character, if that makes sense. She goes on to say that some of the dates on her Wikipedia are incorrect, but she's not tempted to change it and that we should essentially get rid of Wikipedia. Also, imagine saying it becomes apparent that Poppy is breaking character today, and then with that information going on to say, when she says that she doesn't trust technology like Google Home, but the Poppy we know loves AI and the idea of computer learning, right? To which Poppy responds, I'm trying to move backwards, I'm trying to get rid of my technology. In turn, it's going to make it harder to get a hold of me, and my friends mad at me, but it's okay. It's almost like Poppy and Moriah are different people, like you said earlier in the interview yourself. Some of it is interesting, and there's a little bit of learning about Moriah to be taken out of it. So, as a whole, I would say, if you have the time, read it. She's also asked about Grimes and also Mars Argo, more specifically the lawsuit, and this is how that specifically went. What was your learning from the Mars Argo lawsuit last year? She replied with, I just learned more about Hollywood. Did it make you like Hollywood more or less? She replied and said, it solidified my view of Hollywood. Will you elaborate on that? To which she replied and said, everything is not as it seems. That can be your headline. The Swim podcast, on the other hand, is a lot more free-flowing, which is predictable given it's an audio format as opposed to the NME interview, which is purely text. Interestingly enough, about 3.5 minutes in, they talk about Jesse Draxler.
So I saw the artwork.
Mm-hmm. Oh, did Joey
At
sign it?
Reading. Yeah. He just showed me on his phone, but it looks amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, Jesse did all of that, and he took the photos as well. I actually had the flu worse than I've ever had that day, and I couldn't even stand up straight or open my eyes, so in between each camera click, I was closing my eyes.
But yeah, it looks amazing.
Thank you.
He's incredible as well.
Yeah, he's wonderful. Titanic actually worked with him maybe 10 years ago, and they did something together, so it was really funny that it all came back around.
What was 10 years ago, it was Mars Argo related, and it was this merch. Around 13 minutes in, she talks about the start of the project.
When we first started the project, Titanic and I together, we just wanted to make things that our friends would enjoy. And then it evolved over time and turned into what it is today. But on that course, we got to actually witness a side of Hollywood that you only hear about. And then we became in the center of it and witnessing these things. And I think our art has changed over time because it's a crazy thing to experience and to absorb, in a way, some things that are around you that are moving so fast. And
it also features a lot of talk about Hollywood and how it kind of works, but that isn't relevant to the idea of Poppy breaking character or Moriah returning, although it is an interesting conversation. Moriah also mentions that she's heavily inspired by David Bowie, a bit like in the NME interview. Sinclair is also present in the interview and has a lot to say after the 20-minute mark, and I would include that, but this video is about Poppy. Does that make my Jesse Draxler bid null and void? Yeah, kind of. But sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles. Cookies. Anyway, about 53 minutes in, Poppy takes a question. Let me just play it for you. It also features Sinclair, sorry. Also, Daniel Carter, if you want to claim revenue for this, even though it's fair use, go for it. Seriously, I'm referencing your work and playing parts of your work. I can't give you the potential AdSense without you claiming it, otherwise I would, as I'm using bits of your podcast for my video. And more than the 15 seconds as well.
How do you cope with that?
which part?
With things like Twitter and like, because to be an artist that is that would, in a lot of the interviews, it'd be like, where are you from? I'm from the internet. Which is fantastic for a start.
It's the truth.
It is the truth. I get it. But also it's like, how do you deal with being that person?
I don't run my Twitter. My team runs it. I used to, but
At what point were you like, yeah, I'm out?
the past year, I just thought, I don't want to be a person with a Twitter account. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to know what they have to say. I just want to be in my bubble that I just keep inflating so I can't see anything else around me.
Yeah.
It makes, another thing too is like, it makes you wonder, like, let me think of a good example. Like, I can't imagine John Lennon having a Twitter. You know?
Well, that's the other part as well, because I think with social media, it has killed a lot of great art, because instead of being angry about whatever, politics, religion, your friend made you upset, you'll just go on to Twitter. Not me, but some will go onto Twitter and tweet that, as opposed to channeling it into something that could be impactful to the world.
I didn't want to include everything that both interviews include because they're both interesting in their own ways, and it does offer an insight into Moriah. There's always been questions, and there's some footage as well, but these interviews answer some of those questions and not just the ones that Enemy asked. The difference between Moriah and Poppy is now evident. I personally worried that she'd moulded into Poppy a bit, that she was actually how Poppy is in a way, that there weren't many differences between the two. But based off of these two interviews, that isn't the case, and that's good. I admire the artistic side even more, seeing that Moriah can go from how she is in the Swim podcast, for example, to not breaking character in an interview as Poppy. There have also been elements of Moriah seeming to come out on stage. She's a lot more expressive and human in her characteristics now, and I personally like that. I'm not sure that Moriah will retire the AI persona of Poppy anytime soon, but I feel like it's a positive step that she feels comfortable being herself more publicly. As always, I'm keen to have a discussion in the comments. Let me know what you think. So, I'm not sure based off this if there will be like Poppy or Moriah just by herself like she was before Sinclair came along. Like, I don't know if this is anywhere near confirmation that is ever going to happen. I would be surprised if it actually does, but she's actually giving interviews as Moriah, and I think that's a positive step. Maybe not towards her just going back to how she was, but just in general. I personally think it's nice. I like that side. If you did enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like. If you are new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell if you never want to miss an upload. And I'll see you soon for more content.